March 9th, 2020, as we head into hour 2 of our daily 3-hour radio show. It is a delight, because it's Monday, to bring back our favorite world tour guide, Brandon J. Weichert. Brandon Weichert is the editor and publisher of the Weichert Report. The WeichertReport.com is where you can go to get that. He is a geopolitical analyst, and a new book coming out soon in the fall, Winning Space, How America Remains a Superpower. And talked to him a couple weeks ago saying, for a good way to get the week started, understanding the world and what's going on in it, as well as our domestic politics, is to check in with and talk to and learn from Brandon Weichert. Brandon, you are one productive boy. You go to the Weichert Report, and it reminds me. Someone once asked William Buckley how he could produce 2 columns a week. He says, it's pretty easy. I read the New York Times every day and find about 3 things that tick me off.
It's so true. And now with the proliferation of media, now it's like I read 5 or 6 things and it just sets me off, and I'm gone all day.
Well, I am grateful for it. I really
Thank
am.
you
And there's a couple, you bet, always. There's a couple things that particularly I wanted to talk to you about that you write about. First, I think dated today, if I'm not mistaken, if not today, most recently, that Trump needs to stick it to China. I just was in the last hour talking. Good.
That was in American Greatness. That was it from my column in American Greatness.
Good.
I reposted at my site as well.
Good. Because I was just talking in the last hour about China. Someone said, there's going to be, as tough as it is kind of to say such a thing, there's going to be some good news here and there from the coronavirus, or at least there will be positives that come out of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good news.
Right. One of them will be, we're at least taking perhaps our health a little more seriously, our antiseptics and that sort of thing, washing hands a little more seriously. We're all doing that.
Toilet paper is a big one too.
What was the one I saw the other day? I saw someone said in these communities that are reacting very strongly to the coronavirus, the stores are devoid, the shelves are empty of toilet paper and water, and everyone's going crazy. It's kind of a prelude to the Bernie Sanders presidency.
Yeah, it is kind of like Cuba. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Cuba, Venezuela. But no, if we're all taking our hygiene a little more seriously, that's a good thing. I had a caller just before you came on in the last hour, Brandon, saying, also waking us up to China and how dependent we've been upon it.
Yeah.
With regard to medicines, vaccines, and how much they screw with us. In any event, you write Trump needs to stick it to China. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, basically, this is as you said, this is a wake-up call. I mean, I've been one of the people, waving the red flag about this issue. Is that pretty much everything that we rely on in terms of supply chain, anything, right, from pharmaceutical supplies like antibiotics to basic consumer goods are coming out of China. And this goes back decades, back to the 1970s and the early 80s when Deng Xiaoping, the man who succeeded Mao, he took over and he embraced the model of economics that we call in academia state capitalism, but really it's fascism. Yeah. It's big government meets big business, a state-owned enterprise, and basically they drive innovation and development, and they opened up to the West, and the West was more than happy to deindustrialize and send all those old world manufacturing jobs that we were told we'd never need again. We sent that over there, and then their middle class was built up over the last 30, 40 years. And, oh, by the way, our middle class here has died. And, there's a direct link. And so now, I think people are becoming aware of the fact that we basically allowed China to build themselves up at our expense, and now it's not just, they're taking, industrial jobs, and that's affecting middle America. It's affecting everything, and now this is a real health crisis. And now there's, when China gets sick, it's so important to the world supply chain that now everyone's getting sick, not just physically, but in terms of the slowdown in demand for oil, the slowdown in all of this stuff. Everything is slowing down now, and it's going to have real-world implications for our political system. It's going to have real-world implications for our economics, trade, immigration, all of these things. And another thing I'd like to also quickly point out is that this is a warning that we've got to stop globalization now, because you look at the countries that are most affected, setting aside Iran, you look at China, look at Italy, now Spain's getting it. You look at these countries with open borders that are beholden to the globalist ethos of low trade barriers and open borders. These are the countries that are getting hit the hardest. These are the countries that we do not want to be emulating. These are the countries with socialized medical systems, by the way. In Italy, one of the reasons this thing is proliferating, the disease, is because they don't have enough medical equipment. They have to ration the medical equipment. So this is all kind of working, I think, and I don't want to be macabre, but this really is working in Trump's favor if he picks up this ball and runs with it and says, hey, look, everything I campaigned on in 2016, yeah, I was right, because look at what coronavirus has exposed, all of the iniquities of our system.
Nicely stated. We're talking to Brandon Weichert. Very nicely stated. I have so much to follow up on from there, but before I get to the meat of what you said about China, just out of curiosity, because there was another column you had that I wanted to get into, and we'll come back to it. But why did you say accepting Iran? Because of their borders or what?
Well, because they're not really integrated fully into the global global economy. The sanctions. They are, though, heavily integrated into China.
Yeah,
This is why they caught it. One of the reasons is they're and then also Europe still does business. Italy, all these countries in Europe are happily doing business under the table with Iran. So, but they're not totally technically integrated.
Now, one of the reasons to read Brandon Weichert is to learn things you may not have known. Maybe many in the audience would know, but you wouldn't know this from listening to the news, the mainstream news organizations. I'm going to quote from your column, if I may.
Yeah.
Because I don't think most people know this. Whereas many in the scientific community take China's word that the disease originated at a legendary outdoor Wuhan marketplace known for the sale of exotic meat, you, Bill Gertz, a few others, have raised some questions about this, as has Senator Tom Cotton. This is the sentence I wanted to get out, because you don't hear this from the mainstream media. At least I hadn't. Wuhan is home to China's bioweapons program. In fact, it houses a level 4 virology lab that specializes in research on novel coronaviruses. Reports have surfaced in recent weeks that researchers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology have been complaining about lax safety standards when dealing with bats infected with the coronavirus that sounds eerily similar to the COVID-19 strain.
Yeah.
This isn't being reported.
No, not widely. And this is one of my projects right now I'm working on. It's my next year-long project. I'm doing a deep dive investigative report into I've been studying Chinese biotech for the last 3 years. I've been covering that beat for a publication called the New English Review.
Good.
My cover article last month for them, their monthly publication online, and my entire cover story last month was on the Chinese biotech threat. I've written shorter articles on it for American Greatness. But basically, Wuhan is one of the epicenters of China's biotech development, and I'll just save you some of the longer term stuff and just tell you the Chinese have a leap without looking mentality to development. Whether we're talking about building up anti-satellite weapons, or we're talking about biotech development or quantum computing, they have no standard for moral or ethical standards. That there's nothing there. They just push and go and go.
Well, anyone who owns a pet knows this, because right?
Exactly.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
right.
And so toward that end, the Chinese have been, and this is what I've been tracking, since 2013, they've been sending scientists, so-called, into the United States to get National Institute of Health research grants. Taxpayer dollars, U.S. taxpayer dollars. They then are given those taxpayer dollars, these Chinese so-called scientists. They are then sent over to NIH-affiliated labs. They're basically given carte blanche access to all of the proprietary intellectual property, all of the data sets. And since 2015, they've been obsessing about three things: coronavirus research, cancer research, HIV research. And so my big project right now is I'm deep diving into this, and I hope to have an expose on it. Those are the three things that they found in the COVID-19 strain. It's a coronavirus. It's a chimera, though. It's a hybrid, and it has elements of cancer and HIV in it. And I think that they have been stealing intellectual property from our labs conducting experiments on coronaviruses. And I think that they've been playing around with some stuff in Wuhan. I mean, this is a group. Remember, China created pig-monkey hybrids last year. They used CRISPR to genetically enhance unborn baby, that they enhanced the brain of these twins that were in utero. This is a country that has declared biotechnology as one of 7, quote, commanding heights in the next battlefield of the 21st century, and they want to dominate it. Xi Jinping last year identified biotech as part of the China dream. We have to have that in order to have the China dream by
Hold that thought right there, Brandon.
Yeah.
I got to hit a break. We'll come back. There's a lot more. You have a lot. You always are generous with your time. We'll cover everything.
Absolutely.
I am Seth Leibson. He is Brandon Weichert. He is the author and publisher of the Weichert Report. Welcome back to the Seth Leibson Show. I am Seth, delighted to have with us Brandon Weichert. He is the publisher and editor of the Weichert Report, which is just a font of information all the time and free. TheWeichertReport.com is where you can go to get it. I've known Brandon for some years. We're looking forward to his book coming out this fall, Winning Space, How America Remains a Superpower. Emailer Brandon just sent me a listener just sent me an email. That's the way to say that sentence. Great guest. Please ask, how easy would it be for China to cripple the U.S. economy and healthcare system by withholding medicines, especially antibiotics? They may be able to become world dominant almost overnight.
Yeah. Well, they're apparently one of the Politburo members. Apparently, back in December, recommended doing just that to Xi Jinping, who kind of said, "No, we're not going to do that yet." That was during, of course, the trade war. That wasn't even anything to do with the coronavirus. That was their first go-to, was to talk about doing that.
Well, that's what, right? I mean, because we have said China. We've said this for 2-3 decades about China owning our debt.
Well,
they can retaliate against us, and
like you and I out of the room when we would say this.
But we right. Go on.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I for even with the debt, we've been saying China has all these resources and ways to fight us. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to that listener's question, they've talked about it. I am convinced that if things keep getting bad, and they're going to keep getting bad, I think that you're going to start seeing more and more desperation. It's catch-22 though, because the thing is, we don't want to be so dependent on them. But it is true, the people who are pro-trade with China, they're not wrong when they say it is a check against them doing something crazy like that, because at the end of the day, they want to make money so they can keep their rise going. So that is kind of the last check on them doing something really crazy and stupid like that. But that is becoming less and less a factor. So that's why people like me are saying, look, we got to take the risk. We have to decouple now while we still can, so we don't become just protein for the Chinese juggernaut to feed off of.
Now, if I can go back to Iran for a second.
Yeah.
You wrote about Iran. There's a big piece, an important piece up that I want to talk to you about, but let's deal with it first through the issue of the virus, the coronavirus. This was not an unexpected outcome that a closed society, an autocracy, to put it no higher, would do everything we read about, basically, or that we watched. If you saw the cable special on Chernobyl, this is what we're seeing, right?
Right, and China behaves similarly.
I was going to say first China, then Iran.
Yeah, but no. They in fact, in many ways, the Iranian regime was just completely batty in the way that they're still behaving quite irrationally, as always, and they're paying the price for it. And I think it was Trump at the town hall, which, by the way, that town hall he did with Fox News, he needs to be doing that every week.
Right.
That was fantastic.
Yep.
But I think it was him at the town hall who said, look, there is an issue of culture here, because culturally the leadership of Iran, for whatever reason, their hygiene standards are just not the same as what they are among Westerners. It's just that's the system over there. They don't it's not something that they're into, is this sort of very hygienic way of washing your hands all the time. It's just the culture is not, for whatever reason, there. And individually, I'm sure people are there, but as a whole, the leadership there is not imbuing people with the sort of the standards that we expect government to imbue in our people in terms of managing disease outbreak and keeping clean and, sort of the standard thing.
Transparency, admitting failure, all of that.
Right. And so, this is them being hoisted by their own petard.
Yeah.
And in that way, I'm sorry people are suffering for it. It's awful. I don't want to see anybody. I'm a Christian. I don't want to see anybody suffer and die. But at the same time, this sort of is to be expected from a regime that treats its people the way it does, like Iran, and that routinely yells, death to its neighbors and wants to build nuclear bombs. I mean, this is in their military doctrine. They want to build nuclear bombs to wage offensive nuclear war upon their immediate neighbors, whether it be the Israelis or it be the Sunni, the Sunni states or American bases nearby. I mean, at least they say and they act pretty crazy to me. And so this is pretty much on par for them, and they're being hoisted by their own petard now.
I want to do some domestic politics and horse races with you in a minute, but first I have to talk to you about something you wrote in your piece, which I am so glad you did because I almost never see it except once in a while, very rarely once in a while. And it has to do with our longer, greater conflict with Iran that takes you back to the year 1953. I've been studying Iran, I don't know, I think I first got hip to all of it, certainly in 1979, but as I was growing older, when I was involved heavily in free speech issues and that sort of thing, and the Satanic Verses came out, I started doing a really deep dive into it. And I found, interestingly enough, a lot of Americans, academics primarily, defending the Ayatollahs and the malacracy, particularly in regard to the fatwa against Salman Rushdie. And I just was scratching my head more and more and more, and then I realized what a good example Iran was for them, or a good case study Iran was for them, to blame America first for everything.
Right.
And you learn pretty quickly, if you listen to American academics, about the year 1953.
Right.
And then when I started finding real Iran experts, expatriates, for example, and people who weren't into the blame America first thing, they started telling me something interesting about this 1953 year, which so many say is the reason Iranians don't like America, because we meddled in their government.
Right.
You know what they told me? They said they almost never hear about 1953 from Iranians. No one in Iran talks about 1953. Right. You only hear about it from apologists of the regime in the West.
That's right.
Isn't that interesting? And you wrote about it here.
Yeah, I did. I wrote about it originally in the Real Clear World back in January, and then I reposted it on my website. Yes, and basically the thing to remember is in 1953, when the coup happened against Mossadegh, who was the socialist, he was a communist. I mean, that's basically what he was. He was a Marxist. And he called himself a democratic socialist. And, so the concern was that he would be a Soviet client. He was doing things against the British, who had, interests in Iran. They had businesses there. Basically what Chavez and then Maduro did to American businesses in Venezuela, Mossadegh was doing to British businesses and interests there. And so, the British and the Americans said, "Yeah, we're going to do something about this."
And mostly the British, by the way.
Mostly the British. That's very true. And also, you please remember that Khomeini and the Ayatollahs and the Islamists who took over in 1979, who are running the country today, they opposed Mossadegh because they hated communism. They hated communism. They didn't want women's rights. That's the one thing Mossadegh had, is that he was very much before having women's rights and equality and all of that. And the communists, the Islamists, hated it. And so they sat out that revolution. And in fact, there are instances where elements of the group that would end up taking over in 1979, during the 1953 coup, they were helping the CIA. Right.
They were working to overthrow Mossadegh. This whole 1953 thing is a big... Well, it happened, but it's a red hair. It's the biggest of red hair. All right, brother, can we do some domestic politics when we come back?
Let's do it.
Talking to Brandon Weichert, author and publisher of the Weichert Report. We'll be right back. Editor and publisher of the Weichert Report. His book, Winning Space, How America Remains a Superpower, is due out in a couple months. When's that due date, Brandon?
It's September. We're doing the final copy edit right now.
Fantastic. Can't wait. What a great title, too.
Thank you.
You betcha. You and I kind of were surprised with regard to the results of Super Tuesday. surprised that Biden did better than we thought and Bernie Sanders did less well than we thought.
Yeah.
It's been equally surprising to me how quickly so many of the Democrats have been lining up on behalf of Joe Biden. This morning, Kamala Harris and Cory Booker.
Yeah.
A little hypocrisy there in Kamala Harris. She probably being single-handedly responsible for the difficulties of Joe Biden, at least in the early.
Well, she really
right?
thinks she's going to be the vice president.
I guess so. Yeah, and there's
which is hilarious.
It is, and I guess there's no replacement for ego when it comes into politics.
No. Well,
but you and I also think, and I think we think similarly here, that fine if they go with Biden. Okay, if that's what you want to do, it's not going to be what the Democrats think it's going to be when it comes to some of these industrial states, is it?
No. I think he'll probably play okay in Michigan because he does well with African American voters for whatever reason, and I think it has to do with the fact that he was Obama's vice president.
I don't know why other than that. Honestly, everyone says it, and I don't get it.
Dude,
yeah, I just don't get it.
I don't really get it. But whatever. It's
stories about
him.
corn pop aren't doing it for
me.
Yeah.
Right. But so that's the only thing I can think of is he'll be competitive in states like Michigan. But overall, I really don't think if Trump has to, and I don't want to sound macabre,
right.
But Trump needs to use coronavirus to his advantage. He needs to be saying, look, this is what happens when you have all the stuff the Democrats have been doing for 30 years of globalization, neoliberalism. All of this is because of open borders and trade, as it has been. I want to change that. I've been changing that. We don't have as bad of a breakout so far, knock on wood, although, but we haven't yet because I've been changing it, and the Democrats like Biden have been fighting me. That's what he needs to be saying, and that'll, I think, keep that white working class industrial voter on his side, the voters that used to vote Democrat that don't anymore because of 2016. If he can't keep those voters in the industrial states, if they end up even a little bit going to Biden, he'll be more competitive. I think overall, though, the Republican base is galvanized right now. Now, we're still going into the summer, so things could change after the convention. But I think I still think there might be a fight at the convention.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
It's all a little too going smoothly for Biden, who's
it's all a little too quick.
Yeah.
I mean, it went from Bernie is the leader to overnight Biden is.
And oddly enough, if Elizabeth Warren had gotten out before Super Tuesday,
right,
but Bernie would have been winning.
No question.
Bernie would have been decisive.
No question.
And this is so. I don't know if that was planned or what, but it's kind of convenient because she took a lot of Bernie voters away.
You bet.
And Biden, the whole thing is, from what I've been reading, is it sounds like in South Carolina, first of all, he dumped all of his assets there very quickly in the beginning of the campaign season. So of course he was going to win in South Carolina. And then also I hear all of Obama's people and Obama himself behind the scenes were putting pressure on people in the party to support Biden starting in South Carolina. And while Obama hasn't come out, I think Obama might be manipulating the things behind the scene to try to maneuver it so that his legacy is preserved. Because more than anything, 2020 is actually, in a strange way, going to be a referendum on Obama's legacy.
Absolutely.
So
especially with regard to health care and especially with regard to just the being of Joe Biden. I have to hit a break here. I'd love to keep you one more segment, especially if I want to ask. Here's what I want to ask you. So I don't know if I focus on sentences you don't intend me to focus on or not, but you write so many interesting things. You wrote just a sentence here I want to pick up on. Biden has to rely on mythical moderates. I want to ask you about that. Mythical moderates. I kind of agree with you. I think also on that little statement there that goes by pretty quickly, but I want to focus on that when we come back. We'll be right back with more from Brandon J. Weichert, he of The Weichert Report, Weichert, The Weichert Report. I'm Seth. We'll be right back. Talking with Brandon Weichert of The Weichert Report, and you can get his writings at theweichertreport.com every day. It's worth checking out. I check it out every day. You, in a postscript to Super Tuesday, Brandon, you had the sentence I was teasing you about on the way out of the last segment. Joe Biden has to rely on the mythical moderates. Let's talk about that because that is the conventional wisdom. Someone like Joe Biden can do well with, the moderates in this country until he became the superstar that he's become overnight, seemingly overnight. People were saying that about Mike Bloomberg. Also, interestingly, conveniently, how quickly Bloomberg got out. That was a quick Roman candle too, wasn't it? Really fast how quickly everyone said, "No, it's Joe Biden, it's Joe Biden." Mythical moderates. Yeah, talk to me about this. I don't think there are that many either.
No, and Charles Murray touches on this in his 2012 book. I think it was called The Great Divide, which he talks about this since the 70s, Americans have self-sorted, that we've basically moved to parts of the country to be near people who are like us, who think like us, who believe like us. We've all pretty much balkanized. And so the idea, even somebody who does describe them, because I've met people who go, I'm a moderate.
Yeah.
But then you talk, there's a gentleman at the airport, very nice gentleman last week, but when I talked to him, I realized quickly he wasn't a moderate, he was a Democrat.
Right.
Right. And so, Rush Limbaugh,
you and I should just start saying we're moderates.
Yeah. Well, it works if you're in D.C. because they love when you say that, but really that's code for I'm a liberal.
Right.
That's basically what I've found is that mostly when it comes to voting, it's pretty clear cut. If you're supporting Biden, it's because you're generally a Democrat. You may have some heterodox views on certain things. There are Republicans who are pro-pot. There are Republicans who are even pro-abortion, but they're not the majority anywhere near it. And ultimately, they usually end up voting for the Republican candidate, regardless of what their little issue may be. And that's the same as
they tend to be issues they don't care that much about.
Right, absolutely.
They'll hang them out there as their asterisks,
absolutely.
But they don't really. No Republican is voting because of marijuana.
Right, it's a myth. It's
Right.
Generally, if you're taking the time to vote, and you probably have an opinion, and you're probably either Republican or Democrat, and you're going to vote one way or the other. And it's very telling. Even many people, I'm not saying the people in the media, but ordinary people who didn't like Trump but who ordinarily voted Republican, they probably went out and voted Trump. Yep. They held their nose up and they voted Trump, and they'll probably do it again.
I ask them all the time to call in, those that said they held their nose and voted for Trump, and I ask them if they're breathing easier now, if they're still holding their noses. They aren't holding their noses. They are breathing easier. Yeah, they are happy they did it. Yeah, and I think there's more of that. But on a larger kind of politically philosophical thought going forward is I really do think we need to reclaim the issue, or at least the mantle of moderacy. I spent the entire, as you did, as everyone in America did, Obama presidency listening to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama talk about violent extremists we have to fight in the Middle East. And then when talking about Republicans here, talking about them, calling them extremists. Right. They have, I think, cleverly united that theme and that thought, connecting us to the enemies of America.
Oh, absolutely.
And at the same time, they've claimed the issue of moderacy, whereas I think if you look at our platform, we're the moderates.
Heck yeah. It's true. Trump is an old school. Look, you set aside his personality, which is very loud. He's an old school moderate Republican or Democrat from the 1950s.
You bet.
And so that's what he is, and he's not that far to the right on many issues. He's not that far to the left on many issues.
That's right.
He's just where the country needs him to be, and that's why I love him. And look at Obama. Obama, his entire presidency, he wanted to sit down with Kim Jong-il, the now deceased dictator of North Korea. He wanted to sit down with Chavez. He wanted to sit down with every dictator he could find, except John Boehner.
Right.
He never wanted to actually fairly, seriously meet with the Republicans. He hated us.
Right.
And so this idea, and let's face it, Joe Biden, until Bernie came along, Joe Biden was on the far radical left wing of the Democratic Party for most of his career. And that hasn't changed. His brain may have atrophied, with all due respect. He may be a little senile now, but he's basically a leftist. Obama is a leftist. Hillary wrote her thesis on Saul Alinsky. All of the Democrats today, they may wear the moniker or the mantle of moderate, but they are not. They're all Marxists, and they cover it up better than others.
Yeah, if you just go down the issues, is it moderate or immoderate to think you should have protected borders like every other country in the world? Is it moderate or immoderate to think that post-birth abortion should be outlawed or illegal. Is it is it moderate or immoderate to allow more Americans to keep more of their money? I mean, you just go down the list. I don't think. Yeah, go ahead.
Defecate in the streets like they're doing in San Francisco. This is or releasing known criminals into the population like they're doing in New York.
Right.
And these are Democrat proposals. This is pretty radical stuff.
And is it moderate or immoderate to give totally free education and health care to anyone who wants to cross our border?
That's right.
Right. I mean, I just think it's high past time for us to reclaim
it is, and you're right.
What the center of American politics is. And the idea that there are mythical moderates who don't like this president.
Right.
Well, look, I know he's not liked. I know that.
Right.
And I know that the first thing you'll hear from the quote-unquote polite Republicans is it's his style. Well, I have a pretty good response. You know what it is? If it's style and politeness and decency and kindness and Christian ethics you want, Jimmy Carter can do 4 more years. Honestly, if that's what's important to you, he has 4 more years to go.
Yeah, you're right.
He is not term limited yet.
Well, unless we forget, Mitt Romney, I mean, he fixed that bill. He couldn't win. He's not a closer, and he's awful. I mean, he's terrible. And that's what they want, though. That's what these people tell us that they want. But they don't really want that. They want somebody who's going to win.
Of course.
They want somebody who's going to do most of what they believe in, and that's Donald Trump.
Of course.
Now, for me, Trump's doing pretty much everything I want him to do. I'm happy.
You're happy. Well, I'm happy, too, and I'm happy to have you, Brandon.
Well, thank you so much.
God bless you. We'll talk to you next week.
Bless. Thank you.
You bet. 602-508-0960. We'll be right back.